So welcome to the Building Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Barry Cope. You know me by now. And today we have Bill Coltzer Jr. from 06, president of 06, also chair of the board of directors of Coltzer Company. You run a personal legal service? It's not quite a legal service.
Coltzer Company is more on the construction side. Then we do the DBA of 06, which is WH Coltzer. To do the legal stuff. It's literally just a play on words. 06 is the company. We do enough legal work to where, primarily building envelope work, where when I go to be an expert on anything other than building envelope work, everybody questions, "Oh man, you're a building envelope guy. What could you possibly know, about interior wall partitions or anything like that?" I'm like, "Man, I'm an architect. I'm an architect first. I just happen to have some, expertise in building envelope stuff." So I said, "Man, for that end of the business, I'm going to stop doing it as 06. I'm going to start doing that as WH Coltzer." It was kind of a pop tribute. I'm a junior. Pop was used to he was a very informal guy. But he would call people on the phone and go, "This is WH Coltzer in Galveston." I said, "Oh, that's what we're going to call the legal business." And it's funny, once we took 06 brand off of the legal reports, all of the controversy, I said, what could a building envelope guy possibly know about, a leaky shower, which was a bad analogy, but a tile floor, all those arguments went away, and we just focused on the problem at hand now. So
awesome. Well, the first thing we normally do is get you to talk about you, which I don't think will be too difficult. But let's talk about you. Let's go right back from the start and say, talk to me about your career. So you went to college presumably as an architect.
Yeah, I started off, I've always worked. I don't remember not being involved in the construction business. My dad, was a relatively small contractor. Like minuscule compared to, some of the contractors we deal with today. As far as Galveston County went, he's probably, one of the top 3 in the county for the longest time. So we did what we thought was good sized work. It wasn't until I grew up and went into Houston that I realized what a really, big job was. But his idea was that I was going to go to school and become an architect and become the first, quote unquote, qualified architect on the planet, because he had dealt with so many that just weren't very technical. As we sit here 40 years plus later, I've got to confess that architects still aren't a very, technical bunch. When people say, you're a waterproofing architect, I kind of take that as a compliment now. It means I'm a technical architect. I don't know that many. I would like to say I think I'm still a pretty creative guy, an artsy guy. But at the end of the day, I'm known for being a technical guy. I did go to a technical college, went to Texas A&M University, which is known for being a technical school. And when I got out of A&M, I went to work for a very small architectural firm in Tech City, Texas. Shout out to Reed and Clements Architects, Inc. They're no longer around. But it was a 6-man firm. I got out in the mid-'80s when the economy was terrible. But we did a lot of school work, and schools will always do roofing work in the summers. We were in close proximity to a lot of heavy industry. At that time, it was American Oil, Marathon Oil. I forget how many different refineries were in Tech City, but it's a very large, one of the world's largest, populations of industrial personnel, if you will. So their control rooms, their analyzer buildings, whatever they had, the building envelope was super critical. If you had a control building, and they had an upset of some kind where gases got in the air, all the personnel ran to control buildings, and they were a safe haven. The building, a little bit of leakage was not acceptable. They had to be tight. We had dampers, that were smoked tight, and it was super. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was becoming my training. I was already a kind of a technical guy growing up with Dad, and then I go to work for this architect, just because the industry was dead. The only thing we were doing was huge roofs on schools and control buildings and refineries, and that's where the building envelope world kicked in. And industrial work kind of led me to medical work, because that, clean rooms and all that sort of stuff. So it was purely accidental, but what a sweet accident, right?
Yeah, and it was a bit of luck. It sounds like what you didn't realize just there was that you had started training in air tightness.
Yep.
Clean rooms.
Yep.
HVAC. but that was before air tightness was kind of the thing it is now, at least in the UK.
Well, it's still not a thing really in the States. I'm kind of embarrassed to say it, but yeah, back in those days, we were basically commissioning buildings off of what we saw. We didn't do a lot of testing at all. We tested dampers to make sure that they actually, when we hit the alarm, that they closed, but are they super tight? Do we see daylight through them and that sort of thing? Not actually, doing some sort of a pressure test on them or any type of a transfer with smoke. We were just inspecting them.
Yeah, and there's an argument to say, I guess, that in today's world we've maybe relied too heavily on the other way. We do sample testing, but we don't look at everything.
That's right.
Back in the day, we looked at everything. Yeah. So now we test
That's right.
a few things, we pick up some problems, but I think sometimes we've changed some of the problems to be something else. I'm a big fan. We should look over every square foot, every square meter for my European friends of a building before it's handed over. While it's being built, we don't look enough. And if we checked a lot more, we'd pick up a lot more problems a lot faster.
We absolutely would, and in the States, I can't speak for how it is across the pond, but for the longest time, and I'm talking back, I'm 62. Let's drive back 50 years ago. When I was first starting to, and I'm literally, 12, 14 years old, starting to see the things that, paying attention to what was going on the job, not just sweeping the floor when my dad handed me a broom or, making me organize tools. When I actually start, seeing what was going on the job site, who is that guy that came in with the tie? That's the architect. Well, what's he doing? Well, he's making sure we're building it the way, he drew it, and who's he really work for? Is he working for us? No, he works for the owner. The owner hires him to make sure we're doing it right. So I got this idea that the architect was there, inspecting. And then I, went through school, got out of school, got a job, and, my first boss tells me, oh, hell no, boy, if you ever say inspection again, I'm strangling you. We observe. We look for, general conformance with design documents and all that good language. And I asked him then, I said, well, who the hell is inspecting? And on smaller jobs, turned out, most time nobody. In the refineries, it was a lot different because they did have quality control. There's no doubt about it. Somebody was watching you. They may not know exactly what you were doing. They may be more of a pipe fitter or that end, but you were held to a higher standard in those refineries. When I left that small firm, and years later ended up at a great big firm, that did more commercialized work, I was like, wow, the quality of these drawings are super terrible. And then I started explaining to him what we did in the refinery. He was like, you ain't in Kansas no more, boy. This is not refineries. This is general construction. To do what you're talking about doing, we don't have enough budget for that. Nobody's got enough budget for that. And they would look at me like, you think we're doing bad work? I'm like, well, yeah. But it was a long. I don't think I'm still over it. The quality of drawings that we give contractors to build from, it's just kind of crazy. Getting back to inspecting the entire building, if you are going to be an inspector, let's say, okay, the architect is not obviously the inspector anymore, and there are quality control firms that have evolved. We're one of them, we have one of them. Getting access on those job sites. When you get on the job site, it's not the owner's job site anymore. It's not our job site. It's not the architect's job site. It's the contractor's job site. So there's, a lot of stuff we do is high rise. How do you get access to that stuff? Is the contractor going to allow me to put my access equipment on his job? Is the contractor going to allow me to ride his access equipment or climb his scaffolding? For the longest period of time, probably around 10 years ago, that was a route, it ended about 10 years ago. We're seeing a lot better now. We didn't have good access to do the inspections, and when we started demanding it, and working out fair releases, you start seeing that loosen up a little bit. We're getting on the sides of the buildings. We are able to make a difference. You can't, if you can't get there, you can't inspect. And you probably heard me say it before. You don't get what you expect. You get what you inspect. If you can't get there, you can't inspect. So.
Sounds like that should be written on your office wall.
Probably.
So, well, I'm glad you're here because this podcast recording was meant to happen in February when you came over to the UK and you saw the Building Performance Hub.
Right.
You even presented at, I believe it was the AGM, wasn't it?
Correct.
The AGM.
We had a
your
good time.
talk. Yeah, I think
Chris and his cue cards telling me to
Chris,
speed it the hell up.
yeah, shout out to Chris Wilson. Chris will probably be editing the video after we record it,
Probably.
so he'll be laughing out loud at that bit. The cue cards, we don't have cue cards today, so we'll talk and we'll make it happen. But so it's good to finally get you here. We tried getting you in. We tried getting you when you were down with us. So I took the circus to Galveston, and as you can see,
Sunny
the
Galveston.
background. Yeah. In true fashion, the Brit arrives and it rains. And
We have a
it rains
hurricane,
hard.
basically. So
Yeah. I've been careful not to use the word hurricane around my wife.
Yeah.
She doesn't really know it's a hurricane. She just thinks it's a storm. So
yeah, just a little storm.
it's great fun. So you left the architecture company, and were you 06 at that point? You worked for someone else?
I did a couple different stints. I did the small firm. I did the really large firm. I really liked working at the large firm. They let me operate, my division there. We were responsible. My group was responsible for all the contract administration work. If it was in construction, my group and I were in charge of the project at that point. It was super fun, but they were also really good business people, and they understood that doing things that sounded a lot like inspection, things that were forensic in nature, sounded like liability, and told me, we really don't want to do those sorts of things. And I said, well, I really do want to do those sorts of things. So March 16th, 2003, we started 06. And we thought that we were going to do construction administration type work to survive, because I didn't expect to have any credibility in the building envelope market, as I shouldn't. I'm just starting off, new company, who the hell's 06, what's a 06, all that good stuff. You kind of got to earn your wings a little bit. But the minute we broke out on our own, and I mean the minute we broke out on our own, the University of Texas, called and said, hey, we hear you're on your own. And or basically they said, hey, we hear you quit. I went, oh, hell, here it comes. You abandoned me. Where are you going? Blah, blah, blah. I told them, hey, don't get mad. I'm still going to work for the old company as a subcontractor. We're going to get your job done. Just stay with me. Trust me. And I said, Coltzer, we're not calling to give you a hard time. We're calling to hire you. And I said, on what? They said, the same job. We want you to be our building envelope guy, for this 22-story medical research building in the middle of the campus of MD Anderson. I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is super cool.
You left the company and your first contract was UT.
That's right.
University of Texas.
Yeah, that was
That's
it.
some going.
That was cool. And so we went from having pretty much no clients other than my old boss, who paid me a certain amount per week to go to one job meeting per week and represent the firm to get that job through, to the end. Answer RFIs, just manage submittal logs, that sort of stuff. True, just garden variety CA. And then we go to being, a building envelope, which I'll say at that point was a coordinator. At that time, 20-something years ago, that was a $220 million job. Who knows what that would be today? I've had, escalating that. It would have gone up 30% in the last 3 years, right? Who knows? But it was like super cool, and it wasn't the income opportunity that was so like wow. It's like even from a marketing standpoint. How long have you been in business? Well, about 6 months. Well, what's your biggest job? A couple $100 million. And now you've got to, and then who's your client? And in a roundabout way, it was the University of Texas. The truth of the matter is that we didn't have enough credibility to be vetted properly. The brand new company, you're not even getting in the system. You're going to have to go work for somebody else. So we traveled under other consultants for a while that were also doing work on the job, that had the staying power, that were already on the job. We just kind of became their subcontractor. But at the end of the day, everybody knew that we were the boss's guy, and we had a lot of stroke. And that job took us from campus to campus to campus to campus. Because, one guy said, hey, one of our project managers, I got a problem on another project. And at this time, 20 years ago, and it seemed like every job that got to substantial completion couldn't make it to final completion. You get it to where it was ready for beneficial occupancy by owner and all that good stuff by definition. But it's like they couldn't resolve the punch list. Something wasn't passing. Some test. It was leaking. It was like it was just terrible. Okay, and it was the IBC was out, but nobody was paying attention to it. I joke all the time that most of the stuff we try to enforce, has been around since the 2000 IBC. It's just people didn't read Chapter 14 until 2012.
The IBC for our UK viewers or European viewers is the
International Building Code.
International Building Code. The International Building Code.
International Building Code.
Or the National Building Code.
It's the International. It's the only one that matters, Barry. So anyway, that generation of code, was when the IBC came out, it actually started addressing, the building envelope in a more aggressive way than we had prior. If anybody had actually read the code in 2000 or 2003, they would realize that most of the things that we started knee-jerking on and addressing in 2012 had been covered in 2000. Nobody was reading it. Okay, when people started reading the code, our business went up. They're like, oh, that's what he was talking about. That Chapter 14 thing, it's real. It's not a title of a fiction movie or something. It's actually real.
So 2003, you started 06, one employee, just you?
Just me.
Employee number one?
Employee number one.
When did you take your first employee on? At what point did you say, hey, I need some help?
Immediately when MD Anderson said, we want you on the envelope stuff, I said, okay, well, there's a couple things that have to happen. We're going to start generating reports. So I picked up a person that was short term that would just basically type reports for me. Yeah, I would get things started. She would make sure that they were correct and issued. We had two clients on the same job. So once Anderson hired us directly, then we basically told Anderson, why don't you give us an office? Because I didn't have an office. My office was my garage. And I was driving into Houston. We've got this 20-something story building that's almost done. Let me have some office space in this building till we're done. That'll be my office, and I can operate out of it. And it also allowed me to bring another employee in as an inspector type. It was somebody I already knew and was semi-retired. And I said, okay, so while I'm doing the building envelope stuff over here, you need to be working on punch list stuff over here. We were trying to push the job out way too fast, so the punch lists were huge. That gentleman comes to me and says, hey, he says, you're going to pull your old man out of retirement. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, he's going to have to walk these buildings with me to do the punch list. So they were actually growing the business as I was handling the technical portions of the envelope world. And it wasn't until we developed some, because they liked what we were doing on that building, even though it was a new building, there were issues. And that's why the client said, hey, I need you, right? Even though they were just, at that time, they had no idea if I was a good building envelope guy or not. They had no idea. Nobody did, okay? I had no history in it, but what they thought was I was a good problem solver, and I am. I mean, I may not be able to find my rear with both hands at times, but I'm a good problem solver. So they were right on that aspect. But once they found out, hey, I think he is a good building on, he's doing things that are making a difference for passing tests, what have you. Then we started going to different buildings for them. Then the UT system found out, and before you know it, we were in San Antonio. In the earliest days, my kids thought I lived in San Antonio. We were in San Antonio a lot. Natural transition was San Antonio to Austin, and then the not so natural transition in was down to the valley. It was mostly the UT campuses, and then A&M found out about it and found out I was an Aggie. I'm like, well, that's wrong. You're working for them all the time, So we ended up going to work for University of Texas A&M on the same type of. We're kind of an on-call guy. We don't really bid work. It's typically, we qualify every couple of years or however often they want to do it. But you basically work per a rate sheet. It's no fees or anything involved. It's like, what does it take to do the scope of the work? We give them oh, that's great. It's 206. Just in case you were curious. We work from authorizations. We got a big old master contract that has a $0, value. And then each job is, estimated where we create budgets for it, and if it's not within their budget, they tell us go back and try again. We've worked with everybody that we deal with so long now, that
Yeah.
they all know what they're
They
getting before they even call us.
Yeah.
Then they'll tell us it's just like so and so building. And I'm like, okay. And I said to just escalate so and so scope today. Yep, that's pretty out to get it. So
Just make it happen.
yeah,
So then you 06 took off, and I've been to your offices. You have a bunch of people. What's your head count now?
about 44.
44, and that includes all of the companies, or is that just 06?
Right now, I think that's just
It's got-
06.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just
that's
06.
incredible.
Yeah.
And most of those are testing, inspection.
For the most part, it's going to be what we call consultants, and then that's
Yeah.
a pretty broad term. But we've got a lot of guys that are more towards it's overqualified QA/QC people, somewhere between, an inspector and a project manager. But then they're expected to do a lot of the same things that an inspector and a project manager does. It's a kind of it's a hybrid position, just based on our clientele. Most of the people that we compete against, there's a market that we or there's a corral of people that we compete against on drawing reviews. Got it. And then there's a corral of people that we compete with on inspections. Very small crowd. And then there's another corral of, companies, entities that we compete with on testing. Very even smaller crowd. But there aren't that many companies that, we compete with on all three. We're not competing with, another 06-esque building business rather for each building. It seems like we're always, we go in there saying we're going to do this, and then there's three other people in there saying I'm going to do this, this, and this. So that it's put us in a really difficult, and people say that must be great. Well, it is great in one regard, and it's very touchy in another because we do a lot of public work. So they want to know they're getting best value. How do we know we're getting best value if you're providing this service and everybody else is providing a piece of the service? So it makes it difficult. Apparently, obviously, everybody's finding ways to get around it. You go get 3 bids and you add them all up. And you take 06s and or their proposal, their budget, whatever you want to call it. It's also just super hard to push. We think that the way we do it is the way everybody ought to do it. And everybody, well, do you think that because that's the way you do it? And I'm like, well, maybe. But at the same time, I also don't want to see the industry not do, a full on the commissioning side. Do we want to just commission part of it, or because that's what other companies, our support staff can only do part of it. Well, that's a bad decision. I mean, if you put together an orchestra, you don't, go home and compose something that's just around flutes because you can't find a trombone player. No, you need the whole orchestra, right? And I think that's where we are. I don't think that every company or every client out there needs to go find a 06 that does everything in-house, but they need to understand that the program we provide is a good program. And then if you're going to go price that out, and we're a small company that wants to be a small company. I want the industry to grow. I want great competition. I want there to be a dozen 06s out there because it will help take the load off of us somewhat, right? I don't want to be a 100-man, 150-man firm. I like where we are. 44 is really actually pushing my comfort zone. We're a smaller company. I know all my employees. I know when they get pregnant, not the same night, but you know what I'm talking about. We're close on families and that sort of stuff. I know when they're sick. I know what's going on in their life. When when their dad's sick, when they're you name it. It's a family business. I like it. I just want the competitors that we're competing against to be worthy competition. I want those guys to have similar businesses. I want them to give a damn about their folks too. And if we lose a job to them, we lose a job to them. The industry right now is being gobbled up by big companies. And I see some of my really good competitors, get gobbled up. Culture disappears, the brand disappears because the new employees or the old employees don't like working for the new company. Mm-hmm. They disappear. Some of them appear at my doorstep, right? It's just it's an awkward time we're going through in building construction.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of that happening in the UK right now. There's a few companies swallowing up anybody that's certified, anybody that holds certification. Yeah. They're gobbling them up with big money and amalgamating them. And I think the end goal is always good. You create bigger companies, you win more work, but there's a lot of problems sometimes with the little guy, with the with the receptionist, with the cleaner. These people lose out all the time, and it's cool that you have a company where you do know everybody and everything. So next step, WH Coltzer. So at some point in time, you'd left the architecture, started 06 with the other company, started 06. You got some really good traction. You got a bunch of employees, and somehow you're working. And let's skirt around this carefully. You're working legal cases.
Yeah, I mean we do it.
Which is awesome. I think it really shows your personal reputation of being right up there. What happened, without going too much into it and finding yourself in trouble? What happened? How did you first find somebody come to you and say, "Hey, can you help us out? Can you defend us, or can you help?" I'm not sure which way around you were.
Yeah, no, I mean, and this is, believe it or not, this is actually pretty easy to talk around. We can't talk about specific cases, but I can, darn sure tell you, how we got where we are in that legal world. I can tell you the building we're sitting in. This client and I, that case is gone and over. I love the folks, PJ and Wes and Michael, the guys that run C-Star. They had some issues.
We should definitely shout C-Star out.
Shout out to C-Star base.
This building is awesome. It's such a cool building to train in. It's such a cool building to be around. You have panoramic views. If we could spin the camera now, we would. Panoramic views of Galveston it's cool. A super cool building.
Cool spot. And but the way I made friends with those guys was we were helping them through some challenges they had getting this building closed out. And they became more of a friendship. Funniest story ever. When we settled out that case, PJ shows up in my office with he knows I like to cook, and he's a cook-off guy. He shows up at my office and he's got, number one, a really good bottle of hooch, and then some cooking stuff. He said, "Hey man, we appreciate you guys staying with us. I know sometimes we were hard to love and all this other funny stuff." He said, "But we appreciate it." Yeah, that's awesome. That's the kind of relationships we want to build. On the legal side, the way we got started, and it was probably in 2010-ish, somewhere in there. A lawyer called me. I didn't know him. And, I said, "Oh, it's a lawyer." And I didn't really want to work. And he says, "But, so-and-so waterproofing has got an issue in Houston, and, I'm going to be their lawyer, represent them in this case." And I asked them if there was somebody that they knew, on the consulting side. And they said, "Well, there's a guy in Galveston that, we never can make him happy. He seems to be, he's a real pain in our butt, but he seems to be okay. You ought to call him, because if he'll be, as tough on everybody else as he is on us, we'll stand a chance." And that was the first one. That was Craig Tolliver with Gardner Law. He and I became big buddies, and you're starting to see a trend here. If I don't like you, I don't work with you. I like you. That's why you're here, right? And I also I'm not crazy about lawyers. I tell them that we've worked with him up until he retired a couple years ago. We're still doing some work with his firm. But then, once we respond, and we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, I didn't, come look at it. I've never written a legal report. I've never considered myself, expert. It's one of those things that's uncomfortable. Are you an expert? By my standards, by whose standards, I guess. If you're going to call me one, it's, okay, I'm an expert. In the first report we wrote, I didn't have anything. I had never seen anybody else's legal report. So I'm like, what am I trying to say? What are the facts? And just kind of, watch legal shows trying to figure out what a legal expert does, at times, seriously. Googling things, not to Google so much at that time, it's just almost archival. And figured it out, got a report written, and I delivered it to him and said, "Hey man," he said, "that report's different." And I was like, "Oh hell, I did it wrong." He said, No. He said, "It's easier to read." He said, it's a lot, it's kind of, he said, "I haven't heard you a lot." He says, "But I can hear you talking when I read it." Said, is that good? He said, "No, it's great.
That's funny, because when you send me an email,
I hear me talking. So, one thing led to another, and he actually, he and I became very friendly, to where he felt like, "Hey, Bill, I know what you're trying to say, but when you say it like that to a lawyer," he said, "your terms of art, my terms of art, they ain't the same." And then moving forward, other lawyers would call me. Some of them we never worked for again, because if we didn't like them, but I would call him for advice even. "Hey, I'm trying to say this as a lawyer. Do you think that's right? Are you reading something else into it that's going to, get my client into trouble? Because this is my opinion. That's what I want to say, and I don't want anybody jacking with it. But I want to make sure we're speaking the same language." Because I found out we didn't. In many ways we didn't. And it wasn't Billyisms. It was architecture versus legalese. And once again, I was so green in that process. A lot of it didn't have to do with not being a lawyer. It had to, do with not being very savvy in a legal environment. And we never have used that until recently as an income stream. It was something that, for some reason or another, I would be brought a case and I'd go, well, I feel like that guy shouldn't be torqued over. So yeah, let's get in there, let's try to help him. Very few lawyers, to the day, we've got 3 lawyers I think we work for. That said, you've heard me tell this story. We like to manage 6 to a dozen cases a year, and of those cases, maybe 3 or 4 of them are live. Actually have a docket that we're meeting schedules, and they're starting to move. A lot of them are just sitting on the shelf waiting to take off. As we sit here today, we still just work for 3 lawyers, but we've got 150 cases. 150 cases, live cases. Live cases, where reports are, are scheduled out. When people call me for depots, our office is going, okay, he's available on between here and here, and that's it. And most times right now, because we're that busy, we're telling them, hey, if you'll come here, we're available a lot. If I got to go there, you're good luck. They can make me perform, but it's in everybody's best interest if we come up with a mutually agreeable date. So yeah, the legal world's super busy. It's still not, when you talk about the WH Coltzer world, it's 06 at the end of the day. It's a brand. It's just a brand. Just to kind of, we treat it as a different division within 06, so we can tell if it's doing good or bad compared to other divisions. But that's all it is at the end of the day. And we're not trying to, that's not was never intended to be the way that we pay for groceries or the quality of our food. It's something that we did. Just now it's, I don't know, last month it was probably 20% of our business. And that's getting to be where you have to give it attention. You have to respect it at that point. So.
Yeah, fascinating. So let's take you to the next stage. You'll see, for those of you watching on the video, if you're not, we'll put the link in the description. You'll see North American BCTA. And for most of you guys that know me at least, you'll know the BCTA, the Air Tightness Testing and Measurement Association, Sound Insulation Testing and Measurement Association, and chances are, if you found this podcast, you'll know the Building Performance Hub, right? So North America BCTA, the North American BCTA. Let's talk about that a little bit, because this is something I don't know, maybe 3 years we've been involved with. It had a bit of a rough start.
3 or 4, yeah. It was not.
That's how we met. Then
it's absolutely how we met. And I think we can talk about all of it, and you can edit out the parts you don't want. Seriously, but it wasn't. It's not what I wanted to do when I grew up. It's not. I had no intention. I didn't know who you were. I'm glad. There's silver linings to everything, and I think you were probably the silver lining with BCTA. But the goal of the NABCTA back when there used to be, more than me, was to do a lot of what you were doing in the UK over here. And we were looking at air tightness. No doubt you guys have a much better, you guys across the pond have a much better handle on air tightness testing than we do in the States. I mean, you've got higher standards for it. You test more rigorously. Knowing that, the guy that really started this, and it wasn't me, he's looking at you like, hey, that's the way to get BCTA type activities over here. Let's bring that ATMA lodgement at that point. I didn't know what lodgement was to America, and we'll get people signed up to do ATMA lodgement, and that will start building the NABCTA brand, if you will. At that time, it was going to be a testers association, the tester's friend, if you will. At the same time, I was developing that Texas A&M partnership. Okay, so A&M 06 and Texas A&M University Rellis campus, okay, have a public-private partnership. Cool. Especially for a firm our size. And at the time we, inked that deal, we were a 30-man firm. Little firm. We looked at that as, wow, what a marketing opportunity. Now the little 06 is teamed up with A&M. Rock and roll. Let's go. And we were talking about doing training. So now, I've got this group that wants to get me involved in, a testing association. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it, but there's a lot of opportunity for us to be competing with each other, and let's let me, because I'm in the private side right now. I'm having to drive this bus. Plus, I've also made really serious commitments to Texas A&M, and spent 06's money. My employees' bonus pool I have spent in College Station, Texas. Right, I got to make this work. I've got, I can be very unpopular very quickly if it doesn't. So let me develop the training, if you will. I'll give it to you guys as NABCTA to review, because we've all got to agree this is what we want to do, right? And then I'll go spread the gospel. But I can't write, and I'm not comfortable with that. The wheels kind of came off the bus, and somehow or another I ended up with an ABCTA. And I'm like, okay, so now what am I going to do with an ABCTA? Because I'm not just a testing company. The other 5 guys that were helped me out at the time were testing companies, and they were passionate about the testing side of it. I'm not passionate about the testing side. Okay, I'm passionate about the whole damn thing, the whole thing, soup to nuts, man. So if you want to get my passion going, you talk about how we build great buildings. When the building's said and done, we go in it a year later, and people are going, "This is the best damn building I've ever been in." It doesn't leak, it's comfortable. When you walk by the windows, it's not humid, all that good crap. It doesn't stink. That's where the passion lies. It's a bunch of steps to get to the passion. Is your passion watching somebody play the piano or listening to it? I don't care. It's still passion. I'm passionate about everything I do. Testing's just a part of it, and that may have been where some of the disconnect was. But as we sit here, at that day, let's say we were sitting here 3 years ago. And number one, that's when I called you. I said, "What are we, buddy, going to do with this brand that I inherited it? Because I don't have the muscle to do it."
I was half involved in kind of the background, because naturally the BCTA link, and how do you do it in the UK, and how do we emulate that? And it's always one of the saddest things. I think we had something good, and we just couldn't quite get that thing over the line.
Yeah.
And in the end, we saw a bit of your vision. So we saw the thing we're running right now. The reason we're in C-Star right now is because we're running the building envelope commissioning course, which is a 4-day course,
Yep.
three and a bit days,
Yeah.
with 5 modules. And if we can add in acoustics, we tried a
We
little
got
bit of acoustics. So potentially module 6, and the idea of that is that we teach you a little about a lot, so that we find the project managers, we find the people that that need to know about these things, need to know when to raise their hand and ask people, or tell someone that something's gone wrong. And I think that's been one of the success stories. We talk about NABCTA, not slightly negatively for a few minutes there, but it had a rocky start, and it would be wrong for us not to address that. But you've taken that, and we've taken that, and I've flown over here many times. We've been in a few different cities, and we've run these training courses. And now we have 5 different people
Teaching.
Yeah. We can do a
Yeah.
different person per module, which
That's
is
right.
super cool. And alongside that, we're doing the blower door testing, acoustics masterclass, and we're training the people, and we're training them with best practice in mind. And I think that's super cool that we're making that happen. And we've tried it on locally, South Texas, and this thing's going to go big.
It's a slow burn, but there's more things on my calendar than NABCTA, and there's more things on your calendar, for sure, than NABCTA. We couldn't do it without your help. I felt like I'm a little bit on an island to begin with. I got to confess, I was the business component of putting NABCTA together. That's probably how I ended up with it. We could talk about that. That's a whole nother podcast over liquor and not coffee. But I at times I wonder, if I had been, and if it had not come down so fast, I would have been the one that backed away. And I was at that point saying, hey, you guys run with it. maybe you can pay me back for the lawyer and that sort of stuff to set it up another day. But, we're going to end up basically conflicting with each other. And I've got to go take care of this relationship with Texas A&M and train there with some sort of a program. Because it was the relationship. That was the girl I went to the dance with, right? And then the BCTA came in afterwards. Once I ended up with it, it was like it got back to the why was I going to the passion's not just testing. Well, because this NABCTA was set up about testing. Now I'm changing it. If I was going to brand something today, all honesty, it probably wouldn't be NABCTA, right? Because we're doing more of the building envelope risk management stuff. It's way beyond testing. NABCTA today resembles more of what Bill Coltzer would have done, be the whole enchilada, the building envelope stuff, as opposed to just the testing component. So I think it is moving again. Well, I think there's probably some benefit to not being such a fast critter in the past. There's some learning and stuff to do with moving slow, especially if you're not. I haven't been I've been a trainer, but not a training business. I don't know how to operate a training business. And there's been some starting and stopping, and getting people to the classes is extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. Everybody that comes to it goes, "Wow, it's great," and blah blah blah, and they go back to their companies and they go, "Oh, that was great." But at the end of the day, it's a 4-day class. It's not just about sending somebody to the class. It's about, I bill $100 an hour for that guy, and now he's gone for 4 days. Well, let's do the math, right?
Yeah.
That's $800 a day. Let's get real. It's not. It's a big commitment to get people to the class, and our connections have got to be made at a management level. It's not enough to flood social media with it. There's lots and lots and lots of people that want to come to the class. We hear from them every day. But when they go to their boss, they're not selling it the way I would sell it. If I can talk to their boss, I can get them here. And quite honestly, when I'm not hammered with 06, that's what I do. That's when we have the better classes, is when I have a little lull about 3 to 4 weeks out and I start doing those personal emails. We can get people in there. And we just have to have a better campaign moving forward. I'm super happy with every class we've had. Especially in this place, we've packed the room. You're going to put about 24 people in that room, and that's it. It's our, I think that's literally the capacity of that room. When we're at Relish, it's a little different. We've had some big crowds up there. We can fit 50 to 60 in that room. So.
Cool. One of the things we always do is ask our guests the same questions, and that allows us to compare and contrast. So it's not just
And you asked me if I wanted to know these questions, and I told you no. So I want to
know.
I want to see how quick on my feet I am.
Okay, you can do them as long. They're all slightly open-ended. There's no right or wrong answers. But the first one is, what is building performance to you?
Yeah.
What is building performance?
Well, that's kind of a slow, fast one right over the plate. Building performance to me is, it's not about performing day one. Building performance to me is, I wish I could go back in 10 years and perform the testing that we do and see if the building is still performing. It's about that sustainable. And man, I am one of those guys that hates catchphrases and words, and sustainable and resilient. That's what else can you throw in there that's a catchy phrase? But it's right. The building's got to be sustainable. We have a lot of buildings where we go in there and we even flat tell the client. I mean, you and I were looking at that detail earlier today. The building passed testing, but it's still got problems on it, and it's because, it's a sealant joint that was, we keep telling you how to, a good sealing joint isn't, this one's just full of caulking. At some point, it just pulls itself apart. It was good for probably maybe part of year one, but then we had a season change, right? It went from hot to cold, and then everything pulled itself apart, or cold to hot. It's about knowing how to put things together in a fashion that, hey, we're not just going to get past substantial completion. We're not just going to get past the statute of limitations. We're going to build buildings that, perform a long time. We're asking buildings to last a long time, whether they should or they shouldn't. We're making buildings last a long time. Why shouldn't they perform a long time? If they perform, the indoor air quality is better. Everybody's healthier. Everybody's prouder. I don't have to do as much legal work, and I'll go back to doing testing and other things, I would be happy. I would be totally happy if legal work just exhausted itself. One of the stats we throw out in that class is that like 90% of construction defect cases are better. Because these are stats that somebody doesn't want to keep for some reason. This is data and research that we're doing. They're all building envelope cases. Like 90-something% building envelope. And most of that is revolving around water infiltration. Why is everybody so pissed off about water infiltration? Well, it's about air quality at the end of the day, right? You start losing, and that whole mold is gold thing that was going around for a while, right?
Yeah.
It's not insurable. So everybody's like, I can't depend on insurance to fix it. So when it starts happening, I want to fix it fast. I want to nip it in the bud. It's very disruptive. I had to define building performance. It's building performance, performing the way you wanted it to at the end of the project 10 years or more down the line.
Yeah. Cool.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
They're going to be that easy?
Some of them. So if you could change one thing in the industry right now, what would it be and why? In the construction industry, you could change one thing.
I would develop a licensure protocol for the contractors to where my pet peeve is, man, and I've thrown my own clients under the bus this far on the legal side. Don't wake up tomorrow and tell me you're a contractor. I got fired yesterday. What are you going to do? I'm going to build houses. Well, that's great. Have you ever built a house? Do you know how to build a house? I'm on, because I got a little money and, I can bond it because I've got money. I'm going to go build, I'm going to become a commercial contractor. I'm like, you have no experience. What the hell? So changing that, if there was somebody that I felt was actually creditable to train the contractors and license them, that would probably be step one. My desire, to answer to your question, whatever the hell it was, right? But at the same time, if I was going to push that course that we're pushing in there, if you've got somebody that, and probably even the third answer to this as I'm thinking about it, somebody's got to be an expert on the job, right? Somebody, I don't give a damn who it is, has got to be an expert on the job. Everybody cannot avoid that word. Somebody's got to inspect. A building envelope commissioning guy, and if I wanted to be fair, I'd just say a building commissioning guy. We ought to be commissioning the entire damn building together. Systems and static, okay? We commission all those guys together, and then you've got a product at the end. Getting back to legal work, I sit in depositions and settlement, mediations all the time, where I sit and listen to the architect that I've just read his website before. I stalk everybody before I go in there, and they're experts on everything. Okay, you go into the mediation and the deposition. It's like, well, you can't expect me to be the expert. This architect. You can't expect me to know the building envelope. That's an additional service. It's not part of my basic services. And you sit there as a client, or let's say a building owner listening to this BS going down. You're like, okay, so I hire an architect, and I've got to pay him extra money. Are you been kidding me? Extra money to get the building weatherproof. That is wow. If I could change that one thing, it's just putting somebody in control of the process, that is inspecting, towards a good standard. And we don't have it. We obviously don't have it. The legal system is, the construction industry is as broken as the legal system, and I would throw the architectural process right there in with it, without getting on too much of a rant, and I'm going to anyway. Drawings are bad, and we do a lot of peer review. Architectural documents are bad. I mean, we're going to hear architects, are going to hear this podcast, and I'm probably going to have to start my car by remote control, but the truth of the matter is most of the drawings that we get through the office with regard to building envelope are really poor. I mean, like really poor. It looks like we spilled ketchup on the drawings, by the time our guys get finish redlining them. And it's typically things that when we go do the one-on-one meeting with the architect in front of the owner, they just sit there and go, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Now that you've explained it to me, yeah, you're right.
Okay, next question. It's two more. Who's inspiring you right now?
Wow.
That could be anybody. That could be work, family. That could be politicians, lawyers. Who's inspiring you?
I think the lack of inspiration right now is inspiring me. I wished I had more heroes. A lot of my heroes are dying. Dead and gone. No doubt about it. Growing up and everybody wants to say my dad was my hero, unless he beat you pulp as a kid or something. Your dad, that's the most popular response anybody's ever going to give out there. But, from a very early stage, I was working not because my family needed to. And, we weren't a wealthy family, but I never wanted for anything. I was never hungry. I may have wanted a different kind of food, but I always had food. I got out of college and I didn't owe a dime. Okay, my dad paid for my school because he said, I want you to focus. I don't want you distracted. I don't want you to have any excuses. This is expensive and it's important. I want you to get in. I want you to get the hell out. And you're going to go to work and going to get off my leg, right? And that's that. My inspiration right now, is just the fact that there's not many people inspiring me. Relationships are inspiring me right now. And I'm not blowing smoke up your hiney, but this kind of stuff inspires me. When you come back to the States and you remind me that I like training, and you remind me that there's a lot of people in that room that were smiling and talking, and we were bowling last night. That's a good room right now. It's got architect in there. It's got distribution people, it's got contractors. It's a hell of a collaboration. It's people that when they meet themselves or meet each other on the job, may not even like each other because of the roles they're playing. You put them in that room, everybody's laughing and joking, they're bowling and slapping each other on the butt last night. That's inspiration. And so, is there a person out there that's inspiring me? No, I'm being pretty much inspired by lack of inspiration. I want to get it back. I want to bring my passion to those people. That inspires me.
Good answer. Good answer. Last question, and we'll wrap this thing up. Bill Coltzer, you're fresh out of college. You have your college degree. Tell me one thing you wish you would have done differently. It might be nothing, but tell me one thing you'd have wished you'd done differently from that point in your life until now.
Wow. Yeah.
Not necessarily a regret, but
not a regret. Because I honestly, and I always tell my wife, Shelly, Shelly and I have 30-year-old kids, right? We've been married a while, but I've been married before. I was married before Shelly, and it wasn't a horrible relationship or anything like that. I see that lady not often, but every once in a while, and we smile and laugh, all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't a good marriage. It didn't work. It didn't last long. I learned a lot, and because I learned a lot, I would do it all again. And I told Shelly that. I said, you and our lives is better because of some hardships I had down the road. I've had some financial challenges, and we have a little skip in my resume that you and I didn't cover, and that's another one over liquor too. But all of those bad decisions got me where I am today. There's just one or two good decisions or better decisions, and you and I wouldn't be talking. Okay, you know what I mean? I think I'd like to turn the question around. I wished that I didn't think that I knew it all. And everybody coming out of college feels like they know it all, especially if you are somebody that's quick on your feet. And you can argue if I have good intellect or bad intellect all day long, and no matter which side of the story you choose, you may be right, but nobody is going to deny that I'm quick on my feet. Okay, so if you're
talk less and listen more.
Talk less and listen more. The guy that just talked for 90% of our conversation, or at least reach out and talk to some of the right people. I wished right now that I had known more about what architects do. I knew I wanted to be a builder type person, and being my first thoughts of an architect. You got to remember, these guys walking up on the job site and they were confident. And even though my dad used to give them a hard time, they had good working relationships. They produced, back at that day, they were producing good documents, and then I got interested in the documents. That's what I thought an architect did. And knowing now, even A&M, that's a super technical school. When I, got out there in '84, they had trained me to be a designer. Nobody told me that, when you go out into the field and we're out into the real world, that you can go to work for an architect, that you might go to work for a 100-man firm, and in that entire 100-man firm, there might be 3 designers. Okay, we're training an entire industry for 3 freaking jobs. So, the truth of the matter is, architects get out. They do a lot of drafting today. It may be computer-aided drafting, but it's still drafting. You do a lot of submittal checking. It's a very except for those 3 guys, and then maybe, the 10 managers and the 5 or 6 principals in the firm I'm talking about, the rest of us were getting it done. It was a technical field. some of us had more technical training than others or more technical ability, but it was a very technical field. I don't feel like, and I've had friends in universities. I'm not picking on A&M. I'm a pretty proud Aggie, but it's not a technical environment. If somebody came up to me right now and said, I want to do what you're doing, man. I want to be an architect. I'm like, well, I'm a very bad excuse of an architect. If you want to be, closer to what I'm doing, I would never encourage a kid to go be an architect that wants to be an envelope guy, ever. Go and turn off the film for a minute. Go to University of Texas and get a degree in architectural engineering or something like that. They've got it. It's a technical field. It's more engineering based. I think that architects, are basically giving away all their technical work. Every time something gets too technical, we call it additional services. We give it to somebody else, and man, here, it started in about 1983 when RCI, Roofing Consultant Institute, current day IIBEC, said those crazy architects, don't want anything to do with the roof. In 1983, if you were going to get sued as an architect, it was going to be over air conditioning or the roof. RCI jumps out there, starts training roof consultants. They get ahead of the game. Here we sit in 2024, and you've got IIBEC, modern day RCI, wall consultants, roof observers, you name it. They're the guys out there training these technical folks on the envelope, and you're going to see that all that work is just disappearing from architects.
Slightly terrifying.
It's.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Billy, for joining me on the podcast. It's generally fascinating. I'm proud enough to call Billy, a personal friend. I think at this point, our wives are probably out shopping as we speak. As we speak,
even in the rain.
Even in the rain, which is why we've got to wrap this up pretty quick. But thank you for having me. We'll put Billy's LinkedIn link in the description as well. Make sure you follow him on LinkedIn. Go Aggies.
Good fun.
Thank you so much.
That's me.
Thank you.